really excited about change and start putting their hand up and reaching out and trying to go, that's what I truly think that I can own and valuably bring to life right now. So again, appreciative inquiry is a strength-based approach, and it is very much in its nature what its name says. It's appreciative, so it's really about recognizing what we have to grow from and appreciating it, growing it. And as an inquiry, it's really about exploring and discovering. So being open to seeing potential and possibilities. So it's a beautiful approach, and I'm very excited to be sharing it with you today. So first things first, I think it's most important to acknowledge that change begins with a conversation. All change begins with our conversations, and therefore the questions that we're asking. Now, I know that sounds a bit odd because we think, well, change starts with the action. Change starts with the things that we're doing, the things that we're bringing to life, and and what's being brought to be in the world. But in fact, every action we take is preceded by a question. So think about all the questions it took to get you here today. So what time do I need to be there? Where's the link? Am I in the right room? What should I be, if I got, am I hydrated enough to go? What do I have to put off to get there? Are there other things going on? Should I be turning off my notifications right now so I can feel a little bit more comfortable and present and here in the moment? So I'll just put that one out there. But these are the kinds of things that shape the action before the action happen. A lot of the time our questions aren't actually very conscious to us. They're things that happen pretty noiselessly in the background of our mind. Sometimes they're very conscious to us, but sometimes they're really not there. And that's a very important thing to consider when we have a very natural negativity bias. And I don't know how many of you are familiar with this, but we are all wired to be able to really notice what's not working well, what's wrong, what's missing, and what needs fixing. This ability to scan our environment for potential threats and issues is hardwired into us. We're very, very, very good at doing this. We've needed to as a species for a very long time. It's ensured our survival. But the challenge this presents is it tends to shape these unconscious questions that we ask ourselves. So we do find ourselves asking in situations, okay, so what's going wrong? What's missing right now? What needs fixing? Like, what are our weaknesses? What's going on here? And what we find tends to happen, is that we grow in the direction of which we repeatedly ask questions. And that is something that we really need to be conscious of. But I'm going to explore that a little bit more in just a moment. Before we do that, we're going to really spend some time thinking about and exploring this. Before I kick off, Nada, can I check how are you going with those rooms? Do you need a bit more time, or do you think we can have people break out?
We need about 2 minutes.
2 minutes, no worries. So as I do and set this up and get ready, one of the things that I'm going to be inviting you all to do is take a moment to ask yourselves some great questions. We're going to put you into some rooms. You're going to just have, it's only going to be 7 minutes each, so we'll be in there for about 15 minutes. It's going to be very quick, but great questions and a powerful approach to questions is a very hard thing to teach, especially the psychology of if you haven't experienced it. So I promise you this is a very highly valuable thing to do. I'm going to invite you to ask somebody, and you'll be popped into a room at any moment, 4 very simple questions, and you'll have 7 minutes each to do this. So 7 minutes and then you'll swap. And those are, tell me about your best experience of growing well-being in your school, team, or home over the last 12 months. So you choose, you pick which one you want to focus on for your invite. So if it's your turn, say, can you ask me about my home, or can you ask me about my team, or can you ask me about my school? So you decide what you want to focus on, because I know we all come from different worlds. But essentially, question 1, tell me about your best experience. Hello, welcome back.
Right.
Well, the good
I'm
news
sorry,
is,
Michelle, that went a bit prematurely.
nada, that is fine. If we've done anything right now, we've learned that the rooms work. So thank you for your moment there. We've all figured out that the rooms work. So I'm just going to finish giving you instructions and then we'll hop back into them. So have we got everybody back with us? Let's get a wave. I can see you all back here. So thank you. We just jumped the gun a bit with our jumping into the rooms, but that's fine. We know that they work. So if you have a look now in the chat, and you'll be able to take them with you, I've popped our 4 questions. And I'm going to pop up my slides again so you can see them there as well. So they're going to come with you. You're not going to leave them behind. But again, question number 1, tell me about your best experience of growing wellbeing in your school, team or home over the past 12 months. What made that possible? You know, what did it look like? What was it about you, or what was it about you were doing that made that possible? Question number 2, considering what you just shared with me about what made it possible, what is your greatest hope when it comes to growing your wellbeing in either your school, your team, or your home? And what would that look like? What would make it possible? So again, that's question number 2. Question number 3, how can we move from where we are right now towards where we want to be in the future, what you just described to me? And question number 4, is there one thing that you can start doing immediately after this session to move towards this? 4 very simple questions. You've got 15 minutes in total, so that's 7 minutes each. So it's a pretty rapid question, but I wanted you to have an experience of it so that I can teach you the psychology of those questions after this. So I hope that helps. Nada, we are very ready to go.
Okay, awesome. And don't forget to unmute yourselves when you get into your rooms. And you might be in a room with 2 people or 3 people. So hopefully you guys can manage that and get some engagement and some great questions happening and some great responses.
If
I
you're
think we're
3,
about...
you just might need to move a bit quicker. Yep. So as you re-enter, just pause for a moment and think, okay, as I was asked some of these questions, and again, you might not have gotten to all of them. I know it was a quick conversation, but just what did you notice in yourself? And then what did you notice about the other person that, you know, while they were being asked questions about what was working well and what do you hope for and how might we get there? Did you see anything interesting in their responses? And if you did, feel free to pop it into the chat. It's very interesting for me to hear, but otherwise just keep that front of mind for you as we really start to think about what this is and what this has looked like. So again, I think that I'm hoping that some of these questions made you feel a certain way and you just noticed a bit about yourself and even what happened in the change in the other person. Did they smile a bit more? Did they lean forward? Did they open up a bit more? Did they really ponder and consider what happened with them? Okay, Nada. So is everybody back now?
Yes, they are.
Perfect. Okay, so as you think about that, let's unpack what was going on there for us. So again, I want to point out and draw our attention to, we grow in the direction with which we repeatedly ask questions and focus our attention on that. Okay, so, and again, I'm sorry for those who didn't get a chance because of technology to really get in there and finish all the questions and try it all, but I'm hoping you had enough to really notice what did it draw your attention towards. So if I'm asking you questions like, why do we have a bullying problem in our school? How can we reduce bullying? How can we stop people from leaving at our school? You know, why are people leaving our employee? And or maybe even asking yourself, why did I get such a rubbish night's sleep? So what am I drawing my attention towards in the moment with those questions? I'm looking for what's not working well, where are we struggling? And if I'm drawing my attention towards what's not working well, where are we struggling, then we're moving in that direction, we're learning about it. But what's really important to note about that is that we learn very little about excellence by studying failure. And if you want a quote to write down from anyone, that's Professor David Cooper-Ryder, and it's a beautiful one to stick on your desk. We learn very little about success by investing all our energy into studying failure. So if all of our questions are what's not working well, where are we stuck, where are we struggling, we learn very little about what we can be drawing upon and what we can be moving towards. So if we ask, why are we having such a bullying problem? It's a great question, but we are investing in learning a lot about bullying. But when we ask questions that look for the good, the true, and the possible, and they really enable us to flourish. They help us connect with what's working well, uncover strengths, align with our hopes, and get some willingness and motivation around moving forward, and helps us see some of the things that we've been seeing in old ways in very new ways. So again, the way things are around here gets a new, fresh perspective with some really good questions. So if instead of at schools asking, why do we have a bullying problem? Or how do we reduce bullying? If we ask the question, how do we create great, respectful friendships? Then what are we moving towards? We're moving towards what we want to grow. Our energy and our attention is drawn towards what we truly want to be investing in, what we want to learn from, and what we want to move towards. Now, if we're growing truly great and respectful friendships in our school, we are in fact reducing bullying. So it's still addressing the issue most of the time when we flip our questions, but it's not where all of our attention and our energy are going. So I want to walk you through the 5 steps to the process that we just went through. So this is what Appreciative Inquiry is made up of, and you can use this in one-on-one coaching, in individual conversations, in team meetings, wherever you want. And then I'm going to take you through what this looks like as a summit. So as a huge group conversation. So we've got 5 steps, and the first one is define in the middle. We've got discover up the top, dream to the right, design to the bottom, and to the left is destiny. So again, let's pause and ask ourselves as we enter this, are our schools and our people in them problems to be fixed, or are they a world of infinite strengths to be built upon? And we start that by asking, what do we want to grow? We figure out, what are we truly here having a conversation about? If conversations spark change, what do we want to grow? And by establishing a really clear direction for what we're truly hoping for in the future, we can anchor our whole conversation around that. So if I started with, we want to reduce bullying, and I flipped it to, we actually want to grow and move towards greater, more respectful relationships, then that's what we want to grow. That's what we can focus our conversation on. If I've been focusing on, why am I getting such a rubbish night's sleep, and flipped it to, when am I waking feeling rejuvenated and connected? Like, how can I feel more rejuvenated and refreshed during the day? Then it gives me something to move towards rather than move away from. So asking ourselves the question, what do we want to grow? And the answer to that being the anchor for our whole conversation. Once we've got our topic to discover around, we can ask a discovery question. So our discovery question gets to the heart of what's working well. And when we ask a discovery question, we surface people's strengths, we surface their resources, and we surface our confidence. Like, these are things that have worked for us before. We have them in our tool belt, we can reach for them and use them now as we face this new challenge. So what we just asked you to do with that was tell me about your best experience, or tell me about a time when you're building well-being. So that's how we started that question and made it an easy way to connect with what's working well. The next kind of question I asked you is what we call a dream question. So the dream question is getting to the heart of what might be possible. And that helps us paint a really rich and vivid picture of our hopes for the future and what might be possible. So if we've started with our strengths and we've connected with them, we've motivated to think about, let's reach far, let's look for this beautiful future. And you find that our goal setting changes a lot when we're investing in these types of questions and connecting them with our strengths. And you just had that example by saying, if you were to consistently build on your strengths, what might be possible as you grow in the room? So that's how we might start a question like that. Our third question was a design question, which was, how might we get there? So it really helps us generate, after we've got our vision, multiple pathways forward and thinking of as many different possibilities, because the more possibilities we have to move forward, the more it aligns with our energy and the more resilience we can have, because when one way doesn't really work for us, we have many other pathways to draw upon. When we've set up our dream well, we feel things that are meaningful to us and energized because we feel like we've connected with something that matters to us. And when we have lots of pathways, we don't fall down when we stumble at our first roadblock. So again, design questions are powerful here. So based on your hopes you just described, what might you move towards right now? Is an example of that type of question, and you of course used one earlier. And then there's your destiny question. And Nada, I'm pretty sure you'll share these slides. I'll share them with you. So don't feel that you're missing out if they're running past you too quick. We'll get through the content and I'll share these questions. So our last question was a destiny question. So where do we start? This really helps us come up with an immediate step for action, because what we found through our research is that if people don't take an action after a planning session or something kind of great conversation within the first 24 to 48 hours, your chances of actually taking action after that reduce significantly. So it's really important to end great conversations with, where do we start? What's the one thing we can do immediately in the next 24 to 48 hours to bring this to life? These small actions for impact. So this is our process. So again, 24, 48 hours, how can we start making this a reality? So this process, our defining our topic, discovering our strengths, dreaming of a picture and our purpose going forward, designing our pathways there, and coming up with these kind of ideas around destiny and what are the things that we need to be doing immediately to bring them to life, is our appreciative inquiry cycle. And it's how we can frame a conversation for change. So 6 Ds, all of those Ds that we kind of played with there, put us in the path to finding solutions by connecting the strengths of our past successes with the potential of tomorrow and determine how we live today. So it's a beautiful quote from Dr. Michelle McQuaid. So let's talk about what this looks like when we have a summit. So a summit, again, is a big conversations, because remember, a conversation is where our change starts. So what happens when we can have a conversation with everybody who has a stake in the change we want to create, who wants to bring something to life and truly connect in meaningful ways? And this can be quite amazing with really large groups of people, and people who usually get left out of the room when it comes to conversations around changes that matter to them. So this is the format, and I'm going to walk you through it with a step-by-step, and I've got pictures, so you will have something to anchor to, but we can run this in 90 minutes, a conversation like this. I've done many of them online. We can run this over a conversation that spans 3 to 5 hours with a group of people. We can run these conversations over a whole day, and we can run these conversations over 3 days. The opportunities are endless. It's just about playing with this process of questions and helping people come together and connect and bring this to life together, because the outcomes are quite phenomenal. So again, 90 minutes, my most recent 90-minute session I ran with 500 people from around the world. If you've got the technology to support you, and I'm a bit more confident with Zoom, so I'm sorry that it's been a bit, different in this one, but we can make this possible. So think about the kinds of conversations we could be having with large groups of people in your group. So here we go. We've got 2 steps at each of our 6 stages. So we talked about us having 6 questions. We've got 2 steps if we're going to bring this to life with a large group. The first thing we do is define who is the system, who are the people that this change matters to, because it's too often that we find a small group of leaders in a room making decisions alone for very large groups of people. In fact, it's a very old management traditional technique to say we need the experts in a room to come up with the change and get everybody else to buy in. What we understand now, as we understand human systems better in the research and the science, is that this is not the most effective way to get people to engage and energized for change, and to make change that's really meaningful to everybody and that works for everybody. We need to bring multiple voices into the room. If you want to create well-being for your community, then you need voices from diverse perspectives from the community to come into the room. If you want to create it in your school, then you need principals and students and teachers and administrative staff and parents and community members all talking together to bring this to life, because everybody has a stake in that change and everybody can really lend a lot. So invite the whole system. And you can see here, this is a summit that we had with the wonderful KDHD group in Dubai several years ago, and we had about 300 in the room for that conversation. And again, on Zoom, I've had this with groups of up to 500 people, so you can see we can all engage online together. We've just got to bring the voices into the room. Step 2, get really clear on our topic and our questions. And like I said before, we need questions that help us look for the good, the true, and the possible. And we can design them up and make a really clear guide for people. And this is one that I ran a few months ago. So it was Beyond COVID, Unmasking a Collaborative Way Forward in the Outer East. And that was for a whole community group in Australia, in Victoria around Appreciative Inquiry, and we got hundreds of people together to have this conversation. So again, getting clear on our topic is the first step. So if you're thinking about doing this yourself, what's the conversation you want to have? What's the topic? What do you want to grow? And who are the people we need to invite into the room to make sure we've got voices from all different walks to make it a truly generative experience so that we're getting new perspectives and seeing old things in new ways. Okay, step 2. We're at the discovery phase. We're asking that question, what's working well? We're connecting with our strengths. So what we invite people to do is have a paired conversation to ask, what's working well? When things have been going well with growing well-being in your school, when things have been going well with your sleep and you've been feeling rejuvenated, when you've been able to connect and build good relationships with other students, what does this look like? What's been happening? What made it possible? And what we do is we spend time, and here's the breakout rooms list. You can see how we do this on Zoom. Give people 10, these conversations can happen in 20, 15, 20 minutes, and get people a chance to connect with what are the strengths, what's been working well, and what can we learn from that? And then bring it back into a group. So separating them and bringing out what we call the positive core. So we then invite people after they've answered those questions to share, okay, what did you learn from that conversation? What made it possible? We ask them to pop them on Post-it notes and come share them at the front of the room. So this is what we do in a face-to-face session. And on an online group, we have word art that we create. We've even had graphic scribes come to sessions and write up things as people are speaking that look beautiful like this. This is from our Maroondah session. But again, you've just had people share what worked well, what did you learn? The next thing we ask them to do as we're exploring strengths is share back what you just learned. So think about all the things you just learned in your conversation. What made well-being growth in your school possible? And once we have that mapped out and brought to life and shared across everybody in the group, we get a really nice picture of what we have to draw from and build from. So we can start moving into dreaming forward and asking ourselves what might be possible. So the first step in our activities is our third activity. The thing that we do in Appreciative Inquiry Summits is to ask them to start brainstorming. What are some of the big, bold changes we could make to bring these things to life? What is it that you want to see in the future? Paint us a picture. And you can see a group of teachers exploring this and coming up. Sorry, who's just off on? If you could just check your mute, that would be great. So if everybody could just check their mute buttons, thank you. Okay, so again, here's a group of teachers having that conversation. And this is a much larger group of teachers. So this is about 150, 200 having that conversation at their tables. What might be possible if we grew on our strengths? Share, paint a picture. What would the future look like? And once they've brainstormed ideas and really challenged themselves with some good questions, we ask them to creatively make this vision come to life. So we get them to play with their hands, think about this in creative ways, put on some of them presentations and shows. This has worked in summits. It's a great way when we connect with our creativity to connect with meaningful visions of the future. In some cases online, people have been putting together little storyboards with GIFs and explaining what does this look like. In this one, they had Wonder Woman and the Wizard of Oz and all kinds of interesting GIFs to explain the story they were telling back to the group. So each group can have a chance to share back some of what they're hoping to bring to life. Now think about this. If this is a room of hundreds of people and you've been thinking, oh, we can't invite hundreds of people to make change. How would we even hear all their voices? If you've paired them up in groups of 6, paired them up in groups of 2 to have their first paired conversation, then had them in groups of 6 to have these kinds of conversations, you're only getting much smaller groups to present back, inviting them up to share, maybe even getting a graphic scribe. We're hearing hundreds of voices, maybe only through about 6, 7, 8 presentations. It's a great way to bring a lot of information to life and see what are the patterns, what are the things people are excited by and that they want to bring to life in their system at the moment. It's amazing what we think as a leadership group that our schools need. And when we pose the question, what might be possible to the actual school group, they often present quite a different picture. So that's what they care about. What happens when that's different to what we care about? What do we need to learn from the people who are going to actually be bringing the change to life? Okay, so again, we've discovered our strengths. And in pink there, you can see we've dreamed of our purpose and what we want to grow towards. Then we've got 2 activities we can undertake to explore that question of how might we? How might we create pathways forward? So here's a beautiful board that some students and teachers made at Footscray Primary School in Australia around all of the different ideas they had to answer the question on how can they build more positive spaces together at school. And you can see that's heaps, and the little dots are them voting on their favourite ideas. And again, online, I create a Google form and have everybody type in their ideas at once. And then in the little highlights, they go through and highlight these. We did this with some students in Dubai, I'll show you in a bit, to bring this to life. So again, how can we come up with many ideas, vote on our favourites, and then give people a chance to bring them to life, prototype them, build it out. If you were to bring that idea to life, write a storyboard of what that might look like. If your idea was a community garden, actually build it. Show us what it looks like. If your idea was an app, put that together and show the group what it looks like. If it was a step-by-step process to starting at the new job, what might that look like? You're giving people a chance to create in the room and immediately get people engaged. And it's amazing to watch people's energy change with this. So our next step and our final step on the day is to hold a bit of a space for people to see these ideas. So you can see people walking around the room and presenting, going over and seeing what are people brought to life? Can I give you some feedback? And then finally sharing, okay, we love what we saw. What are the next step commitments we want to make? And this was a big group of people coming together that you can see on the floor. They've put down some little steps, but they wrote down on little shoe prints, what is the one thing we're going to bring to life tomorrow and start bringing forward? So this is how we can have a really large conversation and walk through those questions, but in an activities-based way in a summit. And then finally reporting out some of those outcomes. So we celebrate our success and we make sure that we're communicating what we learned from the session out to people through reports and stories and videos from the day. This is a really an amazing approach to bring to life. Again, in a really short 15, 20-minute conversation, we went through all those questions in that time, or in a whole day's format, or in a 3-day format, or in a half-day format. AI summits truly enable people to feel psychologically safe as they explore better ways to think, learn, work, flourish together, and make a positive difference for others. And it's a really unique approach because these are some of the words that people use when they're a part of a conversation, where their voices matter, where they're being heard, and the questions are designed in a way that are positive. So it's drawing people forward towards what they truly want to grow and what they care about. So again, just some of the words that people have used when they've been playing in summits. So finally, could this benefit my school? And we've run these kinds of summits as a group, so at the Change Lab, for lots of different, these are just some of the schools we've most recently worked with on this. We've also worked with many organisations, whole community groups. The largest group I think we've run with so far has been 900. I've seen them run with thousands, and some of the smallest groups we run them with is 20. So again, this can really work as a great way to make rapid change and move people right from what do we want to create change around to discovering their strengths, to coming up with a shared vision, to coming up with pathways forward, and to have tangible actions to move forward in a really quick way. So again, it's amazing what you can bring to life with those powerful questions in one session with people. Could you imagine if you had a change you really wanted to create and you could have every voice in the room and it all could come together that quickly? Oh, I'm not sure whose alarm that is. Okay. So here's an example of just some of the ones that we've done for schools. So you can see here is a wonderful Instagram post from KHTA, and I think it was NADA, in fact, but we coached some students to run their own sessions, and they successfully did this with nearly 300 students in a room together. So students can be given the chance to design their own change by being empowered with a process that helps them ask great questions and get to the heart of what they truly want to explore. In their case, they came to the original conversation saying we're experiencing exam stress and we want to feel a bit, better about it, and we want to be a bit more resilient, and we want to feel less, overwhelmed at that time. So we gave them the chance to learn how do you flip that and ask a question around what you want to grow towards. And they decided that what they truly wanted to grow was how they could empower themselves and each other to do well and be well. And that was the thing that they posed as the conversation topic they wanted to have. And they ran that themselves for 300 students. So it's quite possible. And again, here's another one. We actually ran one. I ran one with a primary school, and they were very bold and very ambitious. And I tip my hat to them because they invited the primary school students to attend. So we had in the room principals, community members, teaching staff, administrative staff, and 10, 11 and 12-year-olds. And at the time I thought, wow, this is going to be scary. How are we going to engage them in this giant strategic conversation around change? And they were amazing and they loved it and they learnt so much. So here's 2 little letters at the end of the session from Summer, who said, I learnt that well-being is about how we make people feel valued and supported, and I hope lots of projects are made from and into real things from what we did today. And I'm going to use what I learned to make people feel more positive and supported. And you can see another one there. So having kids involved in this teamwork and being able to feel like they are empowered to create their own change is remarkable, and in a really simple approach. So again, the intention with Appreciative Inquiry, while it might feel like one conversation and one plan, is really to change our way of thinking, to think about what we want to grow, what our strengths are we can connect with, to move with and connect to and draw from, what we're hoping to move towards. So what's our dream for the future? Designing lots of pathways and then picking the immediate steps we can take. This is an ongoing process that can be involved in every ongoing conversation around the change you want to have. So what happens is that the intention is not to develop a project with a clear beginning, middle and end, but rather to create a new way of thinking, a new way of learning, a new way of communicating, working and innovating that becomes embedded in the way that we're creating change in our schools and our organisations. It becomes a part of our culture and it can be truly remarkable. So I'm going to leave you on a note by asking you if you could have a really powerful conversation for change that left you with tangible actions and invited all of the voices that matter in the change you want to create into your system, what might be possible? How might you be able to use this in your school? So again, what types of questions are driving the conversations in your school at the moment? Are you noticing that they're mainly focused on what's not working well, where we're struggling and what's missing? And could you have more appreciative conversations amongst your teachers and students and parents to help your school thrive? And if you could hold a really large conversation, like a summit, what might you want to focus it on? What would be inspiring for you all to talk about? So I want to thank you so much for your time and energy today. There's a lot to learn with this. You can learn it in a coaching style approach. You can learn it in a huge approach, but learning to ask better questions is at the heart of this, and it's something we could all do with. So I hope you got some valuable things to take away, even if they're just a couple of great questions to start using in your world and work. And if you'd ever like to learn more, feel free to reach out to myself at the Change Lab. Thank you very much for your time. Cheers.
Thank you.
Well done. Thank you so much, Michelle. That was just awesome.
Did that cut off?
Sorry?
Did that cut off? I just clicked on the participant. No, they're here. They're there. Great. They're still. Sorry, I've got a link. I can see.
No, everyone is still here.
Sorry, I thought that it cut off at the end. Again, thank you so much to everybody who came and was a part of this.
Thank you so much, Michelle. Thank you. Okay, we're just going to go back to Menti now, and we're going to also take some questions. So please feel free to add your questions to the chat box. And I'll actually, you can see the Menti code there, 74887150. So first of all, thank you so much, Michelle. That was just awesome. You always deliver fantastic sessions that are clear, that are inspiring and on the point. So really it is about looking for what is working well and flipping our questions so that our question gives, so that our questions look more to what is true, that look for the true, the good and the possible, that enable us to flourish. I love that quote by David Cooperrider. So thank you once again, Michelle. I've been part of a number of AI summits, and I always walk away feeling so inspired and filled with actions of what to do next. So thank you once again. We have a few questions, Michelle.
Happy to sit down.
Great.
In fact, I'm just popping in the chat 2 videos anyone might want to look at to have a look at a bit about some summits that were recently run. But anyway, yeah, so feel free to pose any questions, Nada.
Sure. So Great. So we've got a question here. Oh, there we go. The Maroondah Summit. Oh, yes, I heard about that one. So there's some great summits there. The Dubai Student Wellbeing Summit. I'm sure many of your students may have attended that. Kamari and I were part of that project, and it was just a phenomenal, it was such a positive feeling, that summit, something we will never forget. Okay, so here, what we see depends on mainly what we look for. Thank you so much for the informative session. Thank you for that comment. Let me just get to some of the questions that I picked out. One question is, what is the ideal number of people in an AI summit?
That's a wonderful question. I guess it depends, and on a few things, because we can always make it work to the space and size, as long as it's really budget that's usually one of the biggest challenges around that. So if you've got thousands of people, we can run a summit, but it might take days, and it'll take multiple facilitators and multiple rooms to kind of move people through the spaces. But if you want to do something like what we specialize in, we like to do one-day summits, because schools find it very challenging to get people out and available for more than one day. And I'll say, for example, Professor David Cooper-Hyder, one of the founders in the approach, he tends to do them over 3 days, and we found that just wasn't working for our teachers. So if it's one day and one to two facilitators and trying to bring things to life, ideally 100 people, probably max is, where it's at. 60 is amazing, 80 is amazing in one day. But again, 40 can be quite empowering. So again, that size in one day with just a single resource with an assistant, you'll see some amazing conversation come to life. Yeah, I hope that helps.
Thank you. Yes, great. Who comes up with the how might we statements prior to the summit? Or is that done on the day?
That's a great question. So you've got choices, but my recommendation is always to come up with them on the day. Because one of the things that you'll learn, and thank you so much for asking that question, I should have pointed that out along the way, but when you're hearing the dreams, you start to learn what people truly care about, what they want to see happen in their school. So it gives you a chance to pause and go, ooh, how might we get there? What are some of the key themes that are popping up for people? Let's pop them into questions. So if you do that before the session, I find it's nice to have them for reference, but you'll often find on the day when people have had their conversations, what you thought people would say was mattering and meaningful to them, it's actually quite different to all the things that people come up with. So you've got to be very flexible. And I always try to strategically put in my lunch break or some kind of morning tea break or something like that between those sections, so that I can go away and spend a good, half an hour or so writing them down and getting them ready for this big conversation when people come back. So I hope that helps. It's a skill you've got to build, but we do coaching as well. So if anybody wants some coaching in that space, very happy to help you with that.
Yep. And would you recommend like a small committee that would do that, formulating those questions on the day?
It's a great question, Nada, and something that is important at that first steps when you're defining who needs to come to, be a part of the summit. And of course, setting up our topic, one of the most important things is to have a small group of champions to help bring that to life. And what's important about that group is ensuring that you've got a bit of diversity in it if possible. So if it's all leaders, then you might find that you've kind of only getting that perspective. But if you're doing a summit for a whole school, if you've got a leader and then you've got a teacher and you've got a parent who really cares and maybe a student, all a part of it, they can help bring this day to life from all those different angles. And Nada, I'm sure you'll also advise that having students there helping, being a part of the design and leading the design helped me really pause when we were making suggestions and them going, oh, we wouldn't say that to each other. So how quickly they were able to go, I don't like the way you just put that topic, sounds so you and not us. So again, more voices helps you learn what's resonating, what's not, what sounds like the community and what doesn't. So I hope that helps.
Absolutely. And just one final question, Michelle. Sure. How do we ensure that next steps post-summit actually happen?
That is a great question. Thank you to whoever asked that. I appreciate it so much. So the next steps is an interesting thing because, like I said, change starts with the conversations we have. The thing to note is change is maintained by the conversations we have. So if we immediately take what is a really holistic and very energizing and systemic approach to creating positive change and pop it into our very structured project management systems and tick boxes and allocations and things like that. And we don't really let people in the room choose how they'd like to take things forward and offer their energy and their resources and their skills. We start to immediately take the energy out of what was created on the day. So we want to try and avoid, these systems can support us, but what we really want to do is have more conversations. So in that case, it might be our how might we group. So whoever decided to come together, and often people pair off into different types of how might we's, the things they care about. If we offer them to come together in 2 weeks' time, and in another 2 weeks' time, and maybe a month's time, or maybe a week's time, whatever suits them, to have the exact same conversation again, you'll find it sustains the change. So again, asking those questions. What's worked really well since we've been out there bringing this to life? What are we hoping will happen next? How might we get there? And what's the one action we'll take right now before we come back together and meet again to spark another conversation? And the beauty of that is if things change along the way, for example, COVID strikes or, schools shut down, we are always agile and adapting to our environment rather than creating a plan, putting it in a system, allocating the jobs, and then when things get difficult, not really having a lot of room to make changes based on our current context, our current circumstances. So that is a powerful way to keep things alive. And again, thank you so much for asking that question.
No problem. Thank you so much. And thank you to all our attendees. As you can see on the screen, I've just asked people to pop in your key takeaway that you took from today's webinar. And I'm really, really thankful for those people that have added a comment in there. I can read out a few. Bring in as many different voices as possible that are impacted by the system to be part of discussions. So getting that variety of voices, absolutely. Changing our focus from what's working for us rather than what's not working. And I think that is the ethos of today's session. Be happy and energetic with what you do, because what you see depends on what you look for. That's lovely. Thank you so much. Asking questions to generate the good and to enhance the good, to better and better to best by discovering, dreaming, planning and executing. So thank you so much for your comments. I will leave that there. Yes, Michelle.
One really note, just that point, I'll just take 1 second. I'm conscious that everybody found it really enjoyable to look at the strengths and what was working well. Don't think this is completely shutting off what's not working well, because it's very hard to go into a space like a global pandemic and go, tell us what's working well. But it's allowing us to still hold space. You might even ask a question along the way if you need to. Where are we struggling and what do we need to park? But it's not our whole attention and energy. We can still ask the question, considering the struggles we're facing, what might be possible? Considering where we're at right now, what is actually going well? What are the little moments and the little things that are working for us? So you can still honor the struggle while drawing our attention towards what we can build. I just hope that helps. It's a little caveat, but it will strengthen your conversations. Thanks, Nada.
That's a very important caveat, and I'm glad you added that, Michelle. Thank you so much. Thank you. Just a couple more things just before we leave. You will find a recording of this session on the New Days, New Ways website. So I know there was a lot of information there, a lot of valuable information. So you can always go back to the recording, sit back with a cup of coffee and listen listen to the presentation again. You're welcome to also share it with members of your team and at school. So please feel free. I think this session will be up by tomorrow afternoon. So that's there for you. And just a reminder, our next session will be on Monday at 10 a.m. And we have Erica Al-Kadi, who's the head of secondary at Jumeirah Baccalaureate School. And she'll be sharing her work and her experiences with on well-being and relationships. And she'll be talking about how they've used the data from the Dubai School Wellbeing Census to improve relationships at their school. So with that, I'd like to thank Michelle once again for all her amazing knowledge, for sharing her knowledge and her experiences with us. Thank you so much, Michelle, for being with us. It's been great. And I'll just ask one more thing of everyone is to turn on your cameras. Would love to see everyone and take a group photo if that's okay with everyone. Yay. Awesome. So many lovely faces, so many kind faces. Thank you again for being with us today. We really hope that you enjoyed the session, and we look forward to seeing you at future sessions next week. Have a lovely day. Ramadan Kareem, and thank you so much, everyone. And thank you. God bless you, Michelle. Thank you so much for all that you do for making the world a better place for us all.
Have a great day. Thank you, Nada.
Thank
Cheers.
you, Michelle. Thank you.
Bye.